Hello and welcome to the webinar. Today's topic, a technical deep dive on VMware Cloud on AWS, presented in partnership with VMware and Intel. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. You are in for a real treat on the event today. You'll be learning about VMware Cloud on AWS through the VMware Hands-On Lab environment, which is a completely free, 100% online environment that you can use for yourself to learn about hundreds of VMware products and solutions. So make sure that you check out hol.vmware.com, and we'll be talking about it and demonstrating it throughout the webinar. Now, before we get started, you should know that we want this to be an educational event. We want you to get all your questions answered. We encourage you to use the questions box. It's there in your audience console, and we'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We also have a number of resources available for download in the Handouts tab, special links, PDF assets that you can download. I encourage you to check those out before the webinar ends because they won't be easily accessible after today's event. I'm excited to be serving as your moderator, and it's my pleasure now to introduce you to today's expert presenter. That is Mr. Ryan Kelly, Staff Cloud Solutions Architect for VMware Cloud on AWS and a CTO Ambassador at VMware. Ryan, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VMware Cloud and AWS virtual hands-on labs. My name is Ryan Kelly. I'm a cloud solution architect here at VMware, and today I'll be giving you an overview of the VMware Cloud on AWS solution, as well as an introduction to the hands-on labs, both the mechanics of the labs, how to sign up, and then how to actually finish the lab. And then I'll be available as well for some live Q&A if you have any questions that I have not covered in the presentation or the hands-on labs. I'll be around to help with those as well. So let's just jump right into it. So going back around 3.5 years ago, VMware had this idea that we could run our entire stack, vSphere, NSX, and vSAN on a public cloud. And we were lucky enough that Amazon was willing to partner with us on this solution. So this is a jointly engineered solution. This isn't like we brought the box of VMware ISOs to Amazon and installed our software on their hardware. There were changes that Amazon made to the global infrastructure to accommodate the VMware hypervisor. And then there were also engineering efforts on our side to ensure that we could boot and operate and support this environment as a delivered solution rather than a colo location where you bring in support everything. This is actually managed and supported by VMware. So in the new world that we're in at the moment, I hate to remind everybody, I'm sure everyone gets reminded pretty often about these things, so I'll be really quick here. There are new challenges. So we've had customers that have faced issues with being able to support a large number of their employees working from home and need to stand up very quickly a virtual desktop environment to provide secure access to their applications and infrastructure for those folks that need to work from home very quickly. So VMware Cloud and AWS was a perfect solution for that. We're able to spin up our environment in about 2 hours, an additional host about 15 minutes, and then we can use our Horizon suite to deliver virtual desktops on that environment. And then we've also got customers that for whatever reason were not able to either get onto campus or had supply chain issues and were not able to get additional host capacity in their on-prem data centers. So they utilize VMware Cloud and AWS as a way to extend their data center and to be able to continue to deliver operations and new application workloads on a VMware platform using the VMware Cloud and AWS region. And then we've also had a number of customers that were affected by the fires in California that either found out very quickly they don't have a reliable disaster recovery plan or don't have one that worked, or in some cases just took that time to evaluate those options and have then since adopted VMware Cloud and AWS as a hot site for their disaster recovery of their on-prem workloads. So being able to replicate and mirror their applications that are on-prem to a region in Amazon, and then in the event of a disaster, being able to power those on very quickly and recover and continue business as normal. So business continuity has been one of our very much desired use cases by our customers. So again, alleviating that supply chain issue, we've heard customers taking anywhere from 8 weeks to 8 months to get new hardware because everybody was ordering at the same time. Also, to mitigate the infrastructure risks, a lot of customers have adopted our site recovery solution, which I'll explain in more detail in the next few slides. And then also to be able to enable a workforce to work remotely using our Horizon solution. I've got some more slides on that as well. And then feel free as well, if you've got questions or a specific use case, to post in the chat and I'll answer in the Q&A as well. So why VMware Cloud and AWS versus native EC2 or native Azure or Google Compute Engine for that matter? So to be completely transparent, we're not competing with the hyperscalers on their own server instance technologies. We see that there are going to be use cases, and we have a lot of customers that are building net new applications or cloud native type of applications on EC2, and we see that that's going to continue to be the trend. What we're addressing is our existing customers that have a large VMware or any size VMware footprint on-prem and want to be able to leverage the same technology and the same operational consistency both on their on-prem environment and in the cloud, but also be able to take advantage of some of the new features or new services that some of these hyperscalers have. So for example, Amazon has storage technologies like S3, scalable database technologies like RDS, and there's over 100 other services that you can access. So getting those applications closer is a desire of a lot of our customers, but also there's just applications that either the vendor doesn't support anymore, or the development team that actually created that application is no longer with the organization, or it's just very difficult to reinstall and re-architect that application on a more cloud native architecture. What we allow you to do is have that same consistency, that same VMware footprint, and be able to move it to and from this environment the same way you would do a vMotion today. So even though it is a partnership with Amazon, this is still operated, supported, and purchased by and through VMware. This does not mean it has to be purchased by VMware. If you have a relationship with Amazon, you can also use and leverage that relationship and any discounts you may get from Amazon to purchase this. The point is that we fully support and operate this, and it is operated through, as you'll see in the hands-on lab, it's operated through a VMware branded portal and user experience. It's very similar to what you're used to today for managing your environment through either VCF or vCenter. And then it's the same support number to call as well. So if you have any issue with the environment or operations or a VM performance issue, call the same VMware number. They're going to have a history of all of the support requests that you've had on-prem. If they see a similar issue, they'll be able to troubleshoot that with the knowledge of your existing applications. And then if you have any issue with the hardware as well, or the network connection or the infrastructure, what we're not going to do is say, hey, this isn't our problem. That's something to do with the Amazon side. Go talk to them. We'll own that issue outright, and we'll leverage our relationship with Amazon on your behalf to triage and resolve that issue very quickly. So it does require that you do have an Amazon account, but you don't need to actually know or relearn or get certified on Amazon technology. The solution is designed that it's very much a VMware experience, but again, you do need to have some sort of Amazon connection to an account. And you'll see that in the lab. You'll walk through setting up your Amazon VPC and then connecting your VMware account to your Amazon account as well. And what we're really proud of is we believe we have the first truly hybrid cloud. And in our definition of a hybrid cloud, it's operationally consistent. So having the same hypervisor on both sides, that being VMware, vSphere, and ESXi, and then having the same operation environment above that. So if you're using things like vRealize Suite or any integrations or Power CLI or scripts, it should be the same on both sides. And then we also believe that you should be able to live migrate your existing workloads without any downtime or interruption to and from this environment. So we're not saying there's this Hotel California here, you move in, you can't move out. The solution is designed so that we offer consistency to be able to move your workload in. And then if at any time you decide the service isn't right for you or that workload doesn't make sense to be in the public cloud, you can easily migrate and live vMotion that machine back on-prem. And although you see in our slide here, we have vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, it does not necessarily mean that you have to have those on-prem. What we're saying is we, in the VMware Cloud on AWS environment, I'll go into more detail as well. These solutions are how we are actually delivering and building the environment. So we're using vSAN local storage, and then we use NSX to carve up the actual network connection and then encrypt all the traffic between your VMs and your on-prem environment. But again, it doesn't require even the live vMotion, includes a package we call HCX to be able to deploy the components that you need on-prem, to be able to connect up and stretch your networks and then do the live vMotion, and the plugin to vCenter is all available and it's a part of the actual solution. So one of the add-ons, and this is, to be clear, this is an additional cost. So you would actually subscribe to the service by a host basis. So you buy a minimum of 2 hosts. It could be as many as 3 or 4 initially. You can always add additional hosts later. And then this would be an additional per VM cost to be able to do disaster recovery. And we have now 2 flavors of disaster recovery. We have one using our traditional SRM. So it's our site recovery manager. It's a 15-year-old proven solution that customers have been using on-prem to replicate and do disaster recovery, either between 2 data centers on campus or between 2 data centers across the continent. So what this technology does is actually replicates and mirrors the data from an existing on-prem production virtual machine to a powered off VM in a VMware Cloud and AWS environment. And even though you see the arrows going one way, this could also be something you could use between Amazon regions, or it could be, you could back up the VMware Cloud and AWS VMs back to on-prem if that was your preference. And then we have another flavor that is backing up to Amazon S3, and then that's more for very large data intensive workloads. So if you're going to be running into multiple terabytes, we may want to talk about making the decision if it makes more sense for site recovery to do that, or our new VCDR solution that uses and leverages S3 on the back end. So again, just giving you an overview of our end-to-end disaster recovery abilities. So being able to back up on-prem or VMware Cloud and AWS back to on-prem or between regions. This is an add-on again, so it would be an additional cost per month per protected VM. So it's not something you'd have to buy for your entire environment. You could pick and choose maybe 100 or 500 virtual machines that actually need that type of protection and recovery, and then replicate those, and then you'd be charged monthly for those particular instances. And then again, one of the use cases that has become very popular is being able to stand up these work from home environments. So a lot of customers, have very secure, either they're in pharmaceutical or banking or government type of institutions that don't necessarily want their entire application stack to be out in someone's home environment on an unsecure internet connection. So what they've done is they've taken the desktop and then moved that to VMware Cloud and AWS on a vSphere environment. and then those Windows environments boot up and run there, and then the end user or the employee actually remotes into a virtual desktop and then runs all of their applications securely and remotely from there. And if there is a security problem, what the operators or the security folks at that organization can do is limit or remove the access to that person or that employee, and then limit any security risks that they have. It also allows them to onboard new employees very quickly because they don't have the need to send out a fully managed laptop with all the applications installed. They can just click a button and provision a linked clone environment, and then allow them to have desktop access to all of their applications and continue to do their work as normal. It's also very space efficient. We're using a link clone technology, so we're not actually spinning up 500 or 1,000 Windows 10 images. We're actually linking off of one and then using Delta copies for that environment. And we also use things like app volumes to be able to provision that. And then in the VMware Cloud environment, it's all Intel based. So any of the applications that are currently running on a laptop or desktop PC are going to continue to run the same way that they would operate without any conflicts or interruptions or performance issues. So to give you an overview of how this actually operates, this is all bare metal. So what will happen is you'll go to a VMware branded portal. And as we get into the hands-on lab environment, you'll see how that works. It could be described very similar to like a Pixie boot or a DRAC card or lights out card on a server's motherboard that allows you pre-execution environment to plug in all your IP addresses and which region you want, how many hosts you want, and then what size of the actual host. We have 2 host sizes. And then what'll happen is we'll run automation to boot up that environment on ESX. We'll carve out the local NVMe flash with a dedicated data store provided by vSAN. And then we'll carve up the networking as well. And we'll use all of the NSX firewall and encryption technology to carve out your own virtual private networks to be able to communicate with from VM to VM and then back on-prem. And then our next phase is to connect up either using a VPN over the internet, or we can use what's called Amazon Direct Connect, which is a much faster, more robust connection to be able to communicate with your virtual machines on-prem. And then phase 3 would be deploying our HCX technology to be able to do those live vMotions. And to be clear, this is all the same virtual software that is available to you to download on-prem. So it's the same ESX, it's ESX 7, it's vCenter 7, the latest vSAN, the latest NSX. And the point is we don't want to have any special engineering build or special type of setup here by design, so that we can always provide that same operational consistency, but also ensure that any workloads that you vMotion in are capable of vMotioning out. And then what that does in addition is it allows you to use the same operational tools that you've been using on-prem. So if you're a vRealize customer and using vRealize operations for monitoring and management, or you're using vRealize automation for deployment and automation, then those tools actually work as well the same way they do on-prem. And then any third-party solutions you have, if that's virus scan or third-party monitoring tools or backup tools, all of those continue to operate the same way. Because again, there is a vCenter, it's the same vCenter version that you may be running on-prem. And then we can also link up the 2 environments using single sign-on. So if you prefer to have a single pane of glass to be able to view and manage both your on-prem hosts and clusters, as well as your VMware Cloud on AWS clusters, then as long as you've got vCenter 6.5 or higher on-prem, we can link those 2 up. And then as part of the partnership to encourage and make the VMware services as well as the Amazon service attractive to our customers, we have waived the egress fee between these 2 environments. So for example, if you were using a S3 bucket to back up VMs, and you had a 25 gig VM, and you wanted to at some point rehydrate that VM due to somebody deleting it or corruption in or ransomware or something, and you wanted to restore that. What we don't want is you to have a tax of 25 gig transfer bill from Amazon on that particular rehydrate. So all of that traffic is free. It does not mean that the S3 bucket is something that's free, or Lambda, or any of the other Amazon services. Those would still be purchased, sold, and supported by Amazon. What we're saying is just any of the traffic between these two environments, there is no egress fee. And then there is egress fee between your on-prem and your VMware Cloud environment. So by egress, what I mean is any traffic that leaves this environment. So if it's going out over your VPN or Direct Connect back on-prem, or if it's going out directly on the Amazon network to the internet, and it is 5 cents per gigabyte. So it's actually a little bit lower than what you may see on the published site. So we've negotiated a lower rate to make this service more attractive as well. And then also the application migration traffic would traverse over these connections, and any egress fee for moving very large VMs, obviously you would incur going back. There is a nice new feature that we've just introduced as part of the HCX with the stretch networks. So when you move a VM over a stretch network, if it does need to contact the gateway, obviously it's going to go back on-prem and out to contact something that's local on-prem. But all of the inter-VM traffic now is using what's called proximity routing. So anything that's VM to VM will actually intercept the packets and will not go back on-prem, and you'll be able to lower that amount of egress fee that was occurring if it was VM to VM traffic. So with that, I'm going to just switch over to the hands-on lab environment. I'm going to walk you through how to get logged in, get started, and then walk you through a little bit of the lab, and then point out some of the gotchas that we've seen from previous experience to make sure you go through it smoothly and there's no question, or there's no point where you'd stop and say, hey, I'm going to get charged or something. So to get started, what you're going to want to do is go to hol.vmware.com and then just go to the Get Started button here. And then what's going to happen, it's going to open the VMware Learning Platform. And then from here, we've got a huge catalog. So if there's other technologies from VMware that you're interested in evaluating, or just interested in learning about some of our other products, you can go ahead and take additional hands-on labs. You do need to enroll and sign in. It is free, so you just need an email address, and you'll set up a password, and then we'll let you in for free. It's unlimited use, so it's as many labs you want. They do have a time limit though. Most are about an hour and a half. You can extend that another hour. However, it won't be something that you're going to be able to keep around and then use as your personal lab. They do expire. However, they are very much a real lab environment. So it's all vSphere software. They're written by specialists like myself to be engaging and informative and educational. But a lot of the labs, if you wanted to just try something that was a particular use case for your organization, they allow that as well. So I'm already logged in. I'm just going to go to the hybrid cloud labs, and then we'll just find the VMware Cloud and AWS lab. So we're going to just go to the VMware Cloud and AWS fundamentals. It's HOL 218701 ISM. And now we're just going to roll again. And then we'll go ahead and start this lab. And another thing that's nice here is if you want to invite someone, if you have a colleague at your organization that you also want to train, you can send them the direct link to this. So if you just do invite friend, I can just copy and paste a direct link and email or text that to them. And here I'll go ahead and start this lab. And then you may want to run tests. I've already done so, but it'll ensure that your browser is set up correctly and your network connection's all running properly. And it'll give you instructions and clues on how to resolve any of those issues if it doesn't run correctly. We have had some customers that their corporate security policies don't allow certain things. So if that's the case, I would suggest contacting your IT department or finding a laptop at home or a machine at home that doesn't have those security policies set on it. So here I'm going to go ahead and start the lab. And the majority of labs start pretty quickly. There may be some delay. There are some labs that use a lot of virtual machines that the provisioning time can take a moment, but on average about 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And then here, what you'll see is I've got the lab environment, and then I have my lab manual here to the right at all times. And if you'd like, there are ways you can float this window and move it to another screen. If you've got multiple screens, you can make it bigger if you'd like. And then we're just going to flip through the lab manual. And then there's a lot of guidance on how to actually operate the mechanics of the lab. And then there's a new user guide if you wanted to look at that. And then you can jump through the modules. So the nice thing here is if you restart the lab or weren't able to finish for whatever reason, the lab is not consecutive. It doesn't require that you go through and build out parts of it before you can get to step 4. So you can jump right to come back, if you got interrupted at a meeting or had to deal with the kids or laundry was coming out of the dryer, you could come back and jump back into a module if you'd like. So here we're just going to jump through it, and then we'll get right to the introduction. An explanation of what cloud computing is, and then a quick introduction of VMware Cloud and AWS. I went over that for you, so you can probably jump right through that. And then we're going to want to get is to launch the module. So here, once we get here, we're going to launch the lab interactive simulation. And then that's going to open a new browser window. And what you're going to do first is you're going to go ahead and set up your AWS environment. So again, as I mentioned, one of the requirements or prereqs for the service is you do need an Amazon account. It doesn't have to be an account that has any billing associated with it. You won't actually get any charges for using the VMware service. What we do suggest is if you're already an Amazon customer and you have an existing presence in Amazon, is to reach out to that team and get an administrative access account to provision and connect your Amazon account to your VMware account. However, like I said, it could be just a net new account that you set up through your corporate card or your company's procurement. And then we also have specialists and customer success architects that can help you with this during your planning phases and deployment. But here I'm going to go ahead and just log into Amazon. I've already got an account through my organization. And then I'll just enter the password here. And then I'll search for the VPC services. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a VPC in Amazon. And the reason for this is they're typically in Amazon EC2, there was not a VMware hypervisor. So for our service to operate, we need to place our hosts and our ESX environment, as well as our vCenter and vSAN and NSX inside of an Amazon VPC. And then we use their constructs to connect to our NSX technology. So once you go through all this, you'll have the Amazon requirements set up. And then I'll quickly fast forward. You'll also get to our environment to log into the VMware branded portal and then do the actual onboarding. Let me go back a little bit here and I'll show you. So this is where that Amazon setup makes sense. Is we're going to connect your account to Amazon, and then we'll show you a list of the Amazon VPC that you created, and then which subnet that you want this actual environment on. One thing I like to point out here is we get a lot of questions on this about the charges beginning and the pricing is per host. This is not something that you're going to get a bill for from VMware today. This is just demonstrating how the service would work in production. So pretend that you're a new customer and you're provisioning this. This is how it would look. But we just want to make perfectly clear that participating in this virtual hall today does not mean that you're going to be charged by VMware. And then it'll continue to walk you through setting up the cloud environment, adding users to it, a complete overview, and then eventually getting into the environment. And then if you've completed this and you feel comfortable with the actual onboarding, you can jump back to the VMware Hands-on Lab portal. And then there are actually other, whoops, let me go ahead and end this lab. All right, now that we're done with that lab, there's also another lab that once you've completed the fundamentals and understand how the SDDC is onboarded, you can dive into some of the key use cases I talked about. Again, using things like HCX to pair your site and do those live migrations. So we're going to go ahead and enroll in this particular lab. This is HOL 218702. And then we're going to go ahead and start this lab. And I've already tested, so we can go ahead and just jump right into it. And then you've already got your lab manual. And again, it's just going to take a few seconds to actually start the lab up. So in this lab, it's going to take you a little bit deeper into the solution. It's going to give you a much deeper introduction into Amazon Web Services. So not just setting up the VPC, but it is also going to give you an understanding of all of the services available and how we actually can connect your VMware environment to those services. So for example, if a user of a particular application on a VM in VMware wanted to leverage something like Lambda or RDS or any of the over 100 Amazon services, we'll give an introduction on some of those key use cases. And then a quick introduction again on VMware Cloud and AWS. So you could probably skip that since we did it in the last lab. And then the architecture overview, and then we'll dive into some of the key use cases like HCX as well. So here, again, just more lab guidance, and then intro to Amazon, as well as some of the use cases that we talked about: disaster recovery, cloud migration, data center extension, and then operationalizing it. Again, overview of the actual architecture. And we're going to just skip ahead so we can jump right into some of the key use case scenarios. So here we've got the simulations that are available. So we've got two here. We've got the part one simulation. Again, you know, if you ran out of time or you're only interested in a particular use case, you can jump right ahead. It's not required that you do one to build the other. So here's the actual part one. This is going to be cloud migration with HCX. So just walking you through how to deploy the HCX components, how to set up the SDDC. So there's, like I said, an NSX firewall that's part of the VMware Cloud and AWS environment. You're going to have to open firewall ports and then It is considered an add-on. Again, it's completely included. It's free for as many migrations, as many stretched networks as you'd like to and from the VMware Cloud AWS environment. So this is not the same version of HCX that we do also provide for on-prem vSphere to vSphere environments. For those, you would need an additional license. But for anything that's from on-prem to VMC or VMC to another VMC environment, it's fully included. So here we just open HCX, and it's going to walk you through deploying the components. So there's two parts of it. There's the cloud components. They're virtual appliances that we're going to deploy for you automatically. And then we're going to give you a link to the actual on-prem virtual appliances that you'll need to deploy and configure and set up locally in your local vCenter environment. And then there's an activation key that you're going to need as well. And then we're going to open vCenter locally in the VMware Cloud environment. And this is just going to walk you through all the components that were installed locally. And then now we're going to go log into HCX, make sure everything got deployed and configured. And here we're going to download the link back on-prem and then install those locally in your local vCenter. And then what that'll do is actually push a plugin as well to your local vCenter, and then you'll be able to continue the installation and configuration for your on-prem components. So you're going to deploy an OVF, very common, and then give it the network IPs and information that you need to actually stand up this environment and connect it to the VMware Cloud environment. And so to give you an overview, a quick kind of 101 on what we're doing, we're deploying virtual appliances and we're creating a tunnel between your on-prem networks and the VMware Cloud and AWS environment. And then what we're doing is we're intercepting any traffic that may be headed out towards your physical on-prem gateways. So if you have to go out and talk to a database that's actually sitting in a server room on-prem, that's how we actually communicate that traffic. It is completely software-based, so we are not requiring you to, reach out to your network team and make any changes unless it has to do with like a firewall that may be blocking it or a security device. All of this is done through software, so it's not something you're going to need to buy additional hardware or upgrade your firmware on your existing appliances or on-prem infrastructure. As long as you have the connectivity and visibility from your on-prem to the VMware Cloud, ESX hosts, and vCenter, then you're all set to actually deploy and configure this. So we'll just walk through again, deploying the HCX components on-prem, and then we're going to pair up those two environments. So this is just typical OVA type of deployment. Very easy step-by-step screen. Obviously, before you do this in production, you're going to want to make sure you gather all this information beforehand, so you're not, going to your network team and your DNS and security team and procuring all these information as you go through it. And then once you've gone through that lab, you can actually go to the second part and launch that as well. And then here it's going to finish out doing the actual configuration. So in part one, what you're doing is downloading the actual infrastructure components, setting up the plumbing that's required to create the site pair. And then here you're actually going to be deploying, connecting up those two environments, and then deploying what we call network extension that is extending your local distributed switch port groups out to VMware Cloud and AWS to be able to do that live long distance vMotion. And then once you're complete here, it's going to walk you through actually deploying a virtual machine and then migrating that live. So this is walking through all the configuration steps for HCX. This is a great way to learn as well. So if you are just a recent customer and you haven't even done your onboarding or configured HCX, this is a nice way just to get ahead of the game and go through the actual deployment so you understand all the concepts and the information, the configuration that you need before you're actually doing it on-prem, so that can be very successful. So here again, just plugging through all the addresses it needs and information it needs to actually set this up and deploy it. And then at the end, you'll be able to do a live migration. So here, we'll just jump back into the hands-on lab environment, and then you can read the conclusion as well as understanding about the different purchase options. And then if you'd like to continue and you want to experiment in a real environment, you can scan this QR code, and then we'll send you a link to your email address to be able to use a single host SDDC. And what that means is that's, as you saw, some of these labs are in a simulation. What a single host is it allows you for 30 days to use a physical VMware Cloud and AWS environment. Obviously, to keep the cost low, we're only using one host. So you won't be able to experience things like HA or vMotion between those hosts, but everything that we've gone through in the labs, the onboarding, connecting up your VPN, or if you have direct connect, deploying and configuring HCX, you can do all that in a real hands-on environment. So if you want to really test this out and qualify it, that it does work for your use case and with your configuration and all of your network stack on-prem, what we do suggest is if you do this to not use your production equipment. It's always a bad idea to use anything that's in production or to move and migrate virtual machines that are in production. We always ask that you use equipment that is test equipment, that's non-production, non-critical, and then connect those up. So you could, even on-prem, just have a single host running vSphere and vCenter and be able to do all of the things we described and you were experiencing in the hands-on lab. So with that, I'll go ahead and end the lab. And then it's going to ask you for a quick survey. So if you could fill out the survey, how you felt the lab. We're always looking to improve things. If there's something you didn't like, or if you really liked, we'd love to hear from you. And then we're going to go back to the hands-on lab portal. And if you're still hungry for more information, or if there's use cases we didn't cover in the virtual hands-on labs today, we have a number of additional labs that you can take if you're looking at, oops, I'm in the wrong section here. So if you're looking at understanding how monitoring for VMware Cloud and AWS works, or if you're just looking for other colleagues that you want to have try this quickly, we've got a lightning lab. If you're interested in running containers on VMware Cloud and AWS, we've got a lab for that as well to walk you through that. And then if you're also trying to understand how do you automate this, if you've got developers or you want to do a lot of automation of spinning up the lab without actually logging into the portal and clicking through everything, we've got a great lab that walks you through using Power CLI and Terraform. And then if you're looking at how would you monitor this, obviously it's not something on-prem, it's something new that's remote out there in the cloud. How do you monitor and secure this environment? We've got labs on that as well. So I'll be around for a little bit. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. I'll do my best to answer them and jump into the lab. Make sure you go to hol.vmware.com. Make sure that if you do not already have a login, that you set up a login. We'll just email you a verification. You'll set up your password. You'll get logged in. Again, the service is completely free for you to use. It's many labs if you'd like to take. They are limited to about an hour and a half. You can extend that. And then you can also send, like I mentioned, to invite a friend. You can copy and paste that and send a direct link either to Slack or instant message or text them the link, and they can take our lab as well. With that, thank you, everyone, and take care. Hope everyone stays healthy, and hope to see you all soon at a live convention or VMworld, wherever we meet again. Take care.
All right, great presentation, Ryan. I really appreciate that live demo. That was really cool. I'm a big fan of the VMware Hands-On Labs, and over the years, they've just expanded tremendously. It's a great learning opportunity. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Sure, thank you.
So let's take some questions now from the audience. If you've got a question, now's the time to get it in. We've got the VMware expert on VMware Cloud on AWS here to answer your questions. And we've got about 5-10 minutes here left in the event. So let's take as many questions as we have time for. First question I see that came in, Ryan, this one's from Chris. He's asking, besides AWS, does this work on any other cloud solutions? And then second part to that, are there any hidden costs to watch out for?
Sure. So great question. So as you've probably read, we are expanding our offerings to other hyperscalers. So we've recently announced the main 3 other hyperscalers. Amazon we already have. So we've also got Microsoft Azure, VMware Cloud Services for Azure. We've got VMware Cloud Services as well for Google Compute Engine. And then we've also got VMware for Oracle. I will say there are some subtle differences. You're not going to see all the feature sets across the board from comparing to Amazon, but also each of those particular hyperscalers have unique features for their own cloud and offerings. And then also VMware Cloud AWS, like I mentioned, is about 3.5 years in production. So there's some maturity level there that you're not going to see in those other hyperscalers. It doesn't mean that they don't have plans to catch up. It just means that we've had the relationship with Amazon for a lot longer, and we built features in. It is all still vSphere, so we don't want to send the message that you're not going to be able to do things like live migrate between them or do all the things that you do operation on-prem. It's very similar. There's just going to be subtle differences in networking and storage, as well as some of the feature sets that are available. As far as hidden costs, there's literally no hidden costs. All of our costs for the service, whether it's on demand or subscription based, is published on our website. We're completely transparent about that. The only sort of variable cost that I see with customers is the egress fee. It's something every cloud has. When you load data into any cloud, there's no fee for that traffic, but anything that comes out, so if you did a long distance vNotion out, there could be an egress fee. However, we've negotiated a rate for our customers for that to be very competitive, but it is something that would vary, and that you may, if you have a use case where you're stretching an application that's on-prem and the database is in the cloud, obviously that chatter is going to incur a lot of egress fee, but we can help you architect that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you for being upfront about that. That's a good, kind of thing to be aware of. And it's also interesting to me that not all clouds are exactly the same. So that's something to be aware of when considering exactly where to run this. So great tips. Before I forget, I want to make sure I remind everyone before you go, check out the Handouts tab. In the Handouts tab, you'll find a link to VMware Cloud on AWS, the VMware Hands-On Lab link, a couple of excellent PDF resources, and also a link to Ryan's blog. Make sure that you check out all those excellent resources. Next question comes from Adam. He's asking, are there specific applications like VDI or CAD graphic applications that folks can run on this platform? And if so, do you have a way to monitor the performance of the applications to ensure that they're running well?
Sure. So it's 2 parts. So for the monitoring of the user experience, especially like something like CAD, you you can bring your own if you've already got monitoring solutions that you're used to and have provided that level of support that you need. We also have an integrated solution through our vRealize suite with vRealize operations. We have custom dashboards and integrations built in specifically for that use case. That was even before VMware Cloud and AWS. And then we've also got within the solution a key capability that's important for that use case is we have Elastic DRS. And what that does is, say, for example, you start and you have 10 or 20 or 100 VDI users using CAD on a 4-host environment. We can automatically scale based on compute and add additional host capacity and then remove that as it's not needed. So to increase the performance level and the available resources, we have what's called Elastic DRS, which is playing on our DRS solution and being able to migrate VMs, but adding a host automatically, which is something that most customers on-prem are not either financially capable of or technically, because no one has $50,000 to sit with a server sitting on the floor and not use. But Amazon has plenty of servers for our disposal, so we can add one for an hour and then remove it and put it back into the inventory.
That is an awesome feature, actually. I didn't know about. I mean, I remember when I first learned about DRS and then proactive DRS, which is way cool. And now taking this to a whole nother level, Elastic DRS. So that's a big benefit here for folks who leverage VMware Cloud on AWS, just having that capability. Speaking of using this platform, can you kind of share with us some of the most common use cases for VMware Cloud on AWS?
Sure. Yeah. So the actual most common is data center extension. So we've got a lot of customers that either can't get servers stood up quickly or just are always at that threshold of needing more capacity. Either they have developer environments or they're just getting requests and spinning up VMs so fast they're burning up all of their compute and storage resources. So the most common is customer will start with as small as a 2-node cluster and have that burst capability, get all of their networking and plumbing connected. And then what they'll do is they'll expand that out to 3 hosts, 4 hosts as needed instead of expanding on-prem. And then our second most popular is probably the data center evacuation, where there's a compelling event where the data center is either needs major upheaval or the customer has consolidated their locations and they need to get out of that data center very timely. Or I've got one customer that is in California in the Bay Area, and the real estate for that data center is more expensive than just using Amazon. So the actual square footage of that data center to put a classrooms and a campus on would be more cost effective. So they evacuate their entire data center and then move to VMware Cloud and AWS. And then most of the customers, the reason is they are also trying to focus more on repurposing a lot of their personnel to be doing more innovative things instead of sitting down in the data center doing cabling and racking and stacking. They could be thinking about evaluating new technologies like machine learning and AI or app development, containers, and things like that, so that their company or their organization could be more competitive, as instead of them spending all those cycles on maintenance and upkeep.
Yeah, great point. I mean, having employees is very costly, and so it's not smart to have them doing stuff like firmware upgrades or racking and stacking, servers. Focus on what's most important to the business. So great point. Some great use cases for VMware Cloud on AWS. Follow-up question here from Chris. He's asking if you have any recommendations for a step-by-step resource or guide to help get a VDI up and running with VMware Cloud on AWS.
Sure. So we've got a couple of guides. We've got one that I co-authored. It's at vmc-onboarding.com. So if you want to go out and check out just how to actually do the onboarding. And then we've also got a number of guides out there, both that VMware has published as well as some blog posts of running Horizon on VMware Cloud and AWS. So those are some resources we have available that are just publicly available. And then we do have a professional services practice around the Horizon suite to stand it up very quickly. Obviously, at the very start of COVID, that's what we were spending 90% of our time on, was helping customers to spin up VMC and then get Horizon plugged in, get all those employees to be able to have a mobile workforce. Rather than those customers have very sensitive applications, they didn't want to send all their employees home with a laptop with those key critical applications installed. They wanted to have it much more secure in a remote environment. Any kind of malicious attack, they could just disconnect and triage that type of issue. But yeah, a number of resources out there. Definitely the onboarding guide is there, and there's also a Horizon guide that's available on our website.
Very nice. Yeah, VMware always does such a fantastic job of documentation and providing guides of all kinds. So kudos for that. There's a couple questions out here about the pricing model for VMware Cloud on AWS. How does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So it's all on our website if you want to read more detail. But I'll give you the kind of 5-minute overview. We have on-demand pricing. And the way our pricing works is it's a subscription to the service. So you don't technically own the hardware. Amazon owns the hardware. Also, all the licenses that they're required to run the service. So NSX, vSAN, and vCenter are all included with that subscription. So every time you add a host, you don't need to go to your sales team and reevaluate your license agreement and put in license keys. That's all done for you. Any adjacent products or other VMware products like Horizon, as well as the vCloud suite and vRealize suite, those would be additional bring your own licenses. But anything to run the service, to the storage, compute, and memory, is all included in that subscription. So we have on-demand, which is going to be the highest price because you're not committing to any term, just like a cell phone would be. If you did it per minute, it's going to be the highest price. If you do a 1-year commit, that price goes down dramatically, and then 3-year obviously is going to be the lowest price point. And then you would subscribe to that, buy your 3-year subscription, and then the amount of hosts that you buy. So we sell on a host basis as well, which is a little different than public clouds. We don't sell on a per instance. Then the pros and cons of that are it is host based. So just like on-prem, if you don't utilize that host and run as many VMs there as possible, you're not being very cost effective. It's a lot of hardware to run one Windows VM. But if you're maxing that out, you're getting the max cost return potential. So what we suggest is if you're going to buy, size it right, buy 2 or 3 hosts, try to run that at 80-90%. And that's something a little bit different than on-prem as well that you can do, because we do automatic host remediation. A host goes down, we'll spin up a new one. But we also have that ability to, within 15 minutes, add an additional host. So you don't have to worry about running at 80% and I've got to call Dell or HP and order a new server. It's going to be 8 weeks before I get it. You can run 80-90% at all times. And we encourage that type of utilization. So we can get up to about 600 VMs on a 3-host cluster. Oh. If you did the math per instance pricing, that could be dramatically more. But again, you need to be running it at full capacity to get your return on investment.
Okay, interesting, cool, very cool model there. Jeff, question from Jeff out here in the audience is asking, how much access to vCenter do you have?
Sure. Yeah, so we get this question a lot. So the vCenter is it is a limited rights model. The way I describe it is we support the hypervisor down, and then you support the VM operating system up. And what that means is you have all the rights that you need to be able to operate your virtual environment. What you don't have rights to, because it is a service, because the pager request, or pager, it's showing my age, the ticket request or email is actually going to our support personnel. And so what we don't want our customers to do is inadvertently shut a host down, inadvertently set a firewall rule that locks yourself and our support out, inadvertently put a host in maintenance mode and then change the password and you can't get into it again. Those kinds of things are part of the limited rights model, but essentially everything you need to do the work you require that you do on-prem. So if you have solutions on top of this, like you have vRealize automation, all of that continues to operate the same. If you have Power CLI scripts that automate tasks in vCenter, that all works the same. And then we have the same role-based model that you do on-prem, as well as LDAP integration. But there are some caveats to where, really, the way I describe it to customers is it's just limiting you from blowing yourself up. But also, our personnel, just like you're on-prem, they don't have access to this either. So just like you call a support request in on-prem, you need to jump into a Zoom session, allow them to take control, help you triage that, send logs. It's the same thing here. So there's not somebody back on the back end watching and logging into your environment. It's all a secure environment, as well as any traffic on the Amazon network is isolated from you using NSX and encrypting those connections as well.
Okay. That's good to know that you have access to do everything you need to do, and you can just focus on your applications and get the job done that you need to do. So it looks like we're running out of time. I'm afraid we'll have to get back to some of these remaining questions, but really good demonstration, really good Q&A, Ryan. Last question quickly. You said there is a free trial. Just scan the QR code. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So this would be something if you wanted to take the next step and evaluate that this is a fit for you, and you wanted to get a full end-to-end evaluation within your organization. So, if you have latency issues, or you're still concerned about the network connectivity, the security, just like Jeff said, what access level of vCenter, if it's going to work for your particular use case, that's a real working environment. Again, like I said, don't go and connect this to your production vCenter environments. I've learned from experience, a customer did that. They put a critical Oracle database under control of an automation tool, and the lease ran out and deleted it. So we want to prevent things like that from happening. We're looking out for your well-being. We don't want you to get fired for connecting this up and creating some security hole and you get ransomware or something like that. So just be careful that you are using this with a test environment, because it is very real. There's firewalls involved, there's network security involved, those kinds of things. And if you don't feel comfortable with that as well, reach out to your account team. We also offer guided POCs as well as pilots, where you get a technical resource like myself to ensure that we're making all those checks and balances along the way.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but Ryan, thank you again so much for your excellent presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Abe. It's fun.
And thanks
everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everyone out there in the audience. Make sure you check out the QR code and the links there in the handouts to try out VMware Hands-On Labs and also VMware Cloud on AWS. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.